Hey everybody, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Book of Forgiving by Desmond and Mpo Tutu. They co-authored this, I think largely written and shared by Desmond Tutu, but still very much uh, being invited into some personal experiences from both of them. The Book of Forgiving is founded on or even demands that we found our own theology of forgiveness, and it invites us to revisit our view of humanity. They use the philosophy of Ubuntu, which is a term throughout African countries that talks about or defines our interconnectedness and how our humanity is a shared humanity. When one person suffers, we all suffer. It also makes the claim that we all have a role to play in creating a society that would produce oppressors or perpetrators, and that we are all also interconnected in our conflict and in our healing. Tutu uses this anthropology or vision for humanity and his theology to forgiveness by saying that forgiveness is the foundation to restoring a fractured humanity. It is what mends the tears in our social fabric. And so this book is a journey in forgiveness, both for those needing to forgive and those looking for forgiveness. But this book is more than just something to be read. It is something that you're invited to participate in. So before you get into any of the meat, they ask you to collect two items, a stone and a journal. And at the end of every chapter, you're invited into three things to participate with: a meditation, a stone practice, and finally a journal exercise. And even each chapter ends with a listening to the heart prayer. And so it's very interactive, very experiential, and very powerful. The book begins by taking those first few chapters to outline some of the things I've already mentioned about establishing a theology of forgiveness and analyzing our view of humanity and our interconnectedness. And then the reader is invited and led through the fourfold of forgiveness. And then finally, the book concludes in a similar fashion to how it begins, by taking a few chapters to build the case that all can be forgiven. But the meat of this book is the fourfold path to forgiveness, as outlined in the book. It is first telling the story, second, naming the hurt, third, granting forgiveness, and finally, renewing and or releasing the relationship. Telling the story is simply the process of speaking truth and telling the facts. Speaking the truth is essential because without the truth of the past, there can be no reconciliation in the future. And telling the facts is how one begins to take back what was taken from them. Not telling the story is often to remain imprisoned to our emotions and even to our oppressors. There's also, of course, discernment in the process of who and when to tell your story to. Second, naming the hurt is the process where you begin to identify your feelings and emotions with the facts of your story. And the underlying reality is that these are feelings and they need to be felt and likely validated. So it's taking the time to grieve and understand where you are in the grieving process. And not naming the hurt, they argue, can keep us trapped in our fear and even paralyzed in our state of denial. And it's naming the hurt that allows us to deal with our emotions, and especially our anger, and honoring the process, the grieving process, wherever we may be. The reality too is that this is something you can't do on your own, and it's something that you need to invite others into, that can both acknowledge the harm that was felt and validate what you were feeling. The third process, when you are ready, is to move forward by granting forgiveness. This process can be quick and easy, or terribly and painfully slow and hard, but it is in fact the way forward. And so getting to this place to find the ability to forgive is found in recognizing our shared humanity. And that is where this revisiting our understanding of who we all are is very important. And I would even almost reframe this philosophy of Ubuntu, of simply seeing the image of God in each other, and that we are all created and connected because we are all creations of God. And not only that, we are all in need of grace. We are all flawed. So it's important to note that forgiveness is more than just saying I forgive you. It's learning how to forgive from the heart. And they say a good indicator of true or real forgiveness is actually feeling free from the pain and suffering of what has hurt you. Last step is renewing or releasing the relationship. And Tutu argues that every relationship that calls for forgiveness must be renewed or released. And it is through renewing that we actually get to harvest the fruit that forgiveness has planted, fruits like restoration and redemption and reconciliation. the other side of this is that there are times when renewal is not possible because of more harm that could be caused to you, or even that person is no longer with us, they're deceased. But releasing yourself must happen in some manner to escape victimhood and even some of the effects of trauma. And so it ends again, like I said, with another argument that all can be forgiven, but I also think it ends by adding courage for anyone that is trapped or recovering from the realities of what it looks like to seek forgiveness from someone, or even how to forgive ourselves. But finally, I think they go back to where they started in saying that the path to wholeness, the path to healing, the path to renewed societies is through forgiveness. So a couple of discussion questions that I want to leave you with is, what stories of forgiveness have you heard or seen that reinforce this idea that forgiveness is the way forward? And then my second question is, how does your view of humanity, how you view others, how does that shape your vision for forgiveness in our everyday lives? Look forward to seeing all of your videos. Thanks for checking out the Book of Forgiving.